respect earned. The maintenance tunnel was damp and cold, its walls covered with strange alien vines that pulsed faintly with light. The sound of pounding on the hatch faded as Jack led the twins deeper inside, his breath coming in ragged gasps. Every step hurt. His side burned where the blade had cut him. His arms shook from swinging the pipe. His legs threatened to give out. But the twins needed him, and that thought alone kept him moving. The little ones held onto his torn uniform, their glowing eyes wide with worry. For the first time they were silent. They didn't cry. They didn't scream. They just looked at him, their protector, as if realizing he was more than a janitor. Finally, they reached a hidden chamber where the tunnels connected to the palace's core. The air hummed with energy, the sound of machines running. Jack leaned against the wall, sliding down to catch his breath. He looked at the twins and forced a tired smile. "You're safe. For now," he whispered, but safety was temporary. The rebels would not stop. Already muffled noises echoed through the tunnels behind them. They were searching, following. Jack gripped the pipe tighter. He didn't know how much longer he could fight, but he knew he had to try. Then the chamber door opened. It was the Queen. Surrounded by her guards, she stepped inside, her presence filling the room. Her tall figure glowed with regal authority, her crown shimmering with alien light. Yet her eyes, sharp, calculating, widened when she saw the scene before her. Her twins, unharmed, clinging to a wounded human. "Jack," she said, her voice carrying both surprise and relief. "You brought them back." Jack pushed himself to his feet, swaying but refusing to fall. He nodded once. "I did my best." The Queen moved closer, studying him. There were bloodstains across his chest, cuts on his arms, dirt smeared on his face. His uniform was ripped, his pipe bent from the strikes. He looked nothing like a soldier, and yet he had done what even her strongest guards had failed to do. The twins rushed into her arms, but even as they did, they pointed back at Jack, speaking in their strange, childlike language. Their voices trembled with excitement, their glowing eyes full of something the Queen had never seen before, pure admiration. She looked at Jack again. For a long moment, there was silence. "You stood against them alone," she said slowly. "You protected my children with nothing but your hands and your will." Jack chuckled weakly, leaning on the pipe. "Didn't have much of a choice. Someone had to." The Queen's eyes softened. She, who rarely showed weakness, now let a trace of respect shine through. Around her, the guards exchanged uneasy looks. To them, humans were fragile, weak, useful only for simple labor. Yet here stood a man who had proven them wrong. "You are not just a janitor," the Queen said. Her voice carried power, echoing in the chamber. "You are something far greater." Jack shook his head. "I'm just me, but if you want someone to keep looking out for them, I'll do it. I won't let anything happen to them." The Queen's lips curved, not into her usual cold smile, but something different, something almost warm. "Then from this day forward," she declared, "you are their guardian." The title rang through the chamber. The guards shifted uncomfortably, but none dared question her. The twins beamed, rushing back to hug Jack, their small alien hands wrapping around his waist. For the first time, Jack felt the weight lift from his chest. Despite his wounds, despite his fear, he had earned something no human in the palace ever had: respect. Later, when the danger was pushed back and the palace restored, stories spread. Whispers of the human who stood alone against rebels, of the man who protected the heirs when no one else could, the janitor who became a hero. Jack never asked for fame. He never wanted titles, but wherever he walked in the palace now, aliens turned their heads. Some nodded, some bowed slightly, and the Queen herself spoke to him not as a servant, but as an equal. One night, as he sat in the nursery watching the twins sleep, Jack thought about everything. About how he started as just a cleaner in a strange palace. About how the twins threw food at him, tested his patience, made his life chaos. About how, somewhere along the way, they had become his family. He whispered softly, "Guess I was meant to be here after all." The twins stirred, one of them gripping his hand even in sleep. Jack smiled. He had no crown, no armor, no great weapon, But he had something greater: trust, love, and respect earned not by power, but by standing when it mattered most. And in the silent glow of the alien night, the human janitor who once went unnoticed finally found his place among the stars. The hidden danger. The palace had not been this quiet in years. For once, the alien queen's twins slept peacefully, their strange powers calm. The nursery, though broken and messy, felt lighter than ever before. And at the center of it all was David, the human janitor who had done what no soldier, no scholar, no nanny could. But peace in a palace like this never lasted. In the shadows of the throne room, the queen's ministers whispered among themselves. "This is impossible," one muttered. "How can a human succeed where our finest have failed?" Another hissed. "He is weak. There must be some trick." The queen sat silently on her throne, her eyes sharp. She had seen with her own gaze what David had done. Still, doubt tugged at her mind. Could this fragile human really be trusted with her heirs, the future rulers of her empire? As the ministers argued, none noticed the faint flicker in the corners of the chamber. A darkness shifted there, almost invisible. The shadow that had attacked the twins was not gone. It had slipped away, hiding, waiting, and now it listened. In the nursery, David was still awake. He sat near the twins, watching their small chests rise and fall as they slept. His broken broom leaned against the wall. The silence felt strange after so much chaos. Too strange. His instincts told him something wasn't right. The air was colder now, the lights dimmer. The silence was not peace. It was the silence of something holding its breath. David stood slowly, moving quietly so as not to wake the children. He scanned the nursery. His human eyes weren't as sharp as alien ones, but he had learned long ago how to notice details others ignored. There, in the far corner, the shadows seemed thicker than before. He stepped toward it, his jaw tight. "I know you're here," he whispered. The air stirred, and the darkness rippled like black water. Two red eyes blinked open, glowing faintly. David's chest tightened. The dark one. It hadn't left at all. It had been waiting, hidden, watching. The shadow's voice slithered through the air, low and mocking. "You think you have won, human? You are nothing. Just flesh, just dust. You cannot keep them safe forever." David glanced back at the twins, still asleep, their faces calm. His voice was steady even as his heart pounded. "Maybe I can't keep them safe forever, but I can keep them safe tonight, and tomorrow, and the day after. That's enough." The shadow hissed, its form twisting higher, filling half the room. It stretched toward the sleeping twins, its claw-like shapes reaching. David grabbed the broken broom again. It was cracked, but it was all he had. He stepped between the twins and the shadow, his stance firm. "You'll have to go through me first." The shadow laughed, a sound that made the walls tremble. "You think you matter? You are a bug in the dark." But David did not move. The twins stirred in their sleep, sensing the tension. Their small hands twitched, glowing faintly. Even in dreams they felt the danger. Suddenly the nursery door burst open. The alien queen stepped inside, her royal guards behind her. Her eyes widened as she saw the darkness stretching across the room. "The Dark One," she breathed, her voice sharp with rage. The guards raised their weapons, but the shadow only laughed. Blades and blasters had never harmed it. Yet there stood the human janitor, a broken broom in his hands, facing it without flinching. The queen's heart pounded. She had expected him to cower, to flee, but instead he stood as if he had been born for this moment. David raised his voice, firm and unshaken. "You're not taking them." The twins stirred again, their eyes flickering open. They saw David standing tall before the shadow, their mother behind him, and something inside them shifted. For the first time, they felt what true protection was. The shadow hissed and pulled back, its form trembling with fury. "This is not over, human. The night belongs to me, and I will return." With that, the darkness dissolved into the walls, vanishing as quickly as it had appeared. The nursery fell silent once more. David lowered the broom, his arms heavy. He turned toward the queen. "It's not gone. It's waiting." The queen studied him, her eyes unreadable. But deep inside she knew he was right. The Dark One was more than just a shadow. It was a danger tied to her children. something even she did not fully understand. And now, the only one standing between them and that danger was a human janitor, the impossible stand. The palace was no longer safe. Alarms screamed through the alien halls, echoing off the tall walls of silver stone. Red lights pulsed, painting everything in a glow that made the children cry louder. The twins clung to Jack, their small alien hands trembling, their eyes glowing faintly in the dark. The enemy had found a way inside. The Queen had warned Jack of this danger. There were rebels, alien factions who hated her rule and would do anything to hurt her. But what none of them expected was that the rebels would target the twins. If they captured the heirs, the Queen's empire would fall. Jack knew one thing: no one else was left to protect them. The guards had rushed to fight at the front gates. The Queen had been pulled to safety by her advisors. And somehow, in the chaos, the twins were left in a long, empty hallway with only one person standing between them and the danger: Jack, the human janitor. His heart raced. He was no soldier. He was just a man who cleaned floors, fixed machines, and carried buckets. Yet here he was, holding the hands of two alien children while the sound of heavy footsteps drew closer. "Stay behind me," Jack whispered, his voice shaking but steady enough to calm the twins. "Don't let go." The twins clutched him tighter. From the shadows at the far end of the corridor, figures appeared, tall, armored aliens with glowing weapons. Their movements were sharp, precise, like predators hunting their prey. Jack could see their strange eyes glimmering, fixed on the twins. One of them hissed in a language Jack couldn't understand. Another raised his weapon. Jack's stomach turned cold. He had no weapon, no training, nothing but his own body. But he remembered something the Queen once told him. Humans are strange. You break easily, yet sometimes you do the impossible. Now was the time to prove it. Jack grabbed a metal pipe that had fallen from the wall during the alarms. It was heavy, uneven, not meant for fighting, but it was all he had. He stepped forward, putting himself fully between the twins and the intruders. His legs shook, but he stood tall. "Not one step closer," he said, his voice stronger than he felt. The aliens laughed, a cruel echoing sound. To them, this human janitor was nothing, a weak creature holding a piece of scrap metal. They advanced anyway, the twins whimpered, pressing against his back. Jack's heart pounded. He had to think. He had to do more than just stand there. He remembered the maintenance tunnels, narrow, hidden passageways that twisted under the palace. He had cleaned them for months, memorized their paths. The rebels wouldn't know them. If he could just buy enough time, maybe the twins could escape. The first alien lunged forward, swinging its weapon. Jack reacted without thinking. He ducked, swung the pipe upward, and struck the alien across the head. The sound of metal against armor rang out, followed by a sharp hiss of pain. The alien stumbled back. Jack's arms ached from the impact, but adrenaline kept him moving. Another attacker rushed forward. Jack blocked the strike with the pipe, sparks flying as the weapon clashed. His hands burned from the vibration, but he didn't let go. "Run!" Jack shouted to the twins. "To the tunnel!" The children hesitated, terrified, but then they obeyed, darting toward the small maintenance hatch at the side of the hall. Jack stayed in front, swinging the pipe with desperate strength. He was outnumbered, but he didn't stop. Each strike, each block, each step was fueled by something stronger than fear. He wasn't just fighting for himself. He was fighting for them. Blood ran down his arm from a cut. His legs trembled. But when another alien raised its weapon toward the twins, Jack roared, a raw, human sound, and threw himself in the way. The weapon slashed across his side, sending pain shooting through him. He didn't fall. With one last surge of strength, Jack smashed the pipe into the alien's chest, knocking it back. The path cleared for only a moment, but it was enough. The twins reached the hatch and crawled inside. Jack stumbled after them, his body screaming in pain. As he slammed the hatch shut, the rebels' weapons struck against the door, shaking it violently. The children's glowing eyes looked up at him, filled with fear and tears. Jack forced a weak smile even as blood dripped down his shirt. "It's okay," he whispered. "We're not done yet." The tunnel was dark and narrow, but it was their only chance. Jack leaned against the wall, pipe still in hand, ready to keep moving no matter how much it hurt. For the first time, the alien twins realized something. This human wasn't a soldier. He wasn't a warrior. But he was something else. Something they had never seen before. He was willing to stand, broken and bleeding, against impossible odds. The impossible stand had begun. Chaos unleashed, the night deepened. The nursery, glowing with soft alien lights, slowly grew colder. Shadows moved across the walls like living things. The twins sat quietly now, their glowing eyes dim. They should have been calm, but instead they kept looking toward the far corner of the room, the darkest place where the light did not reach. David noticed. He set his broom down and crouched beside them. "What's there?" he asked. The boy did not answer. The girl whispered, "It comes when the suns sleep." David frowned. "What comes?" Before she could answer, the air in the nursery shifted. The hum of power that always surrounded the twins grew sharp, crackling like broken wires. The floating toys rose again on their own, spinning faster than before. A crystal lamp burst into shards. The walls shook as if the entire palace had taken a breath. The twins clutched each other, their mischief gone. Their faces, once full of power and pride, were pale with fear. From the shadowy corner, something moved. It was not a toy, not a trick of light. It was darker than the walls, a shape with no clear form. It slithered upward, stretching tall, its outline twisting like smoke. Two glowing red eyes appeared in the blackness, unblinking, cold. David's heart raced. He had no weapons, no armor. Just his hands, his voice, and a broom. The twins whispered together, their voices trembling. "The Dark One." The creature stepped forward, its body rippling like liquid shadow. Wherever it moved, the air bent, and the floor cracked beneath its weight. The toys in the room shattered, falling in pieces to the ground. The twins began to glow, their small bodies sparking with blue energy. They tried to lift the creature with their power, but it only laughed, a hollow, chilling sound that made the lights flicker. The boy cried out, "It doesn't fear us." David quickly moved in front of the children, his arms spread wide. His voice was steady, even though his heart pounded in his chest. "Stay behind me." The twins looked at him in shock. No one had ever stood between them and danger before. Not even the bravest guards had dared face this shadow. The Dark One lunged forward, its shape stretching like a whip. David grabbed the broom and swung hard. To his surprise, the broom connected. The shadow hissed, recoiling as if the simple wooden stick had burned it. The twins gasped. How did you do that?" David didn't know. He only knew one thing: he couldn't let fear control him. The shadow roared, shaking the nursery. Feathers from broken pillows swirled into a storm. The twins huddled close, their eyes glowing brighter, feeding off David's courage. For the first time, their powers did not feel wild or chaotic. They felt focused. "Listen to me," David said quickly, his eyes still locked on the monster. "Don't fight it with anger. Stay calm, focus, like a game." The twins nodded, trembling, but they obeyed. Their hands glowed brighter, steadier this time. Together they lifted pieces of broken toys and furniture, forming a shield around themselves and David. The Dark One struck again, smashing against the barrier. The shield shook, but it held. David raised the broom like a sword, stepping forward. "You don't belong here," he growled. "Leave them alone." The shadow hissed again, striking faster. The broom cracked, splinters flying. David gritted his teeth and swung again, forcing it back. Each strike made the twins' shield stronger, their confidence growing. The Queen watched from her hidden chamber, her eyes wide. She had never seen the Dark One this close. Even her strongest warriors had failed to keep it contained. Yet here was a human janitor, untrained, fragile, ordinary, standing against it with nothing but a broom and stubborn courage. The twins cried out together, their voices echoing like thunder. "Now!" They unleashed a burst of light, their powers flowing not as chaos but as pure energy, guided by David's calm. The blast struck the Dark One, ripping through its smoky form. It screamed, a sound so loud it shook the palace walls. The shadow dissolved, fading into the air until nothing was left but silence. The nursery was a wreck, broken toys, shattered glass, feathers everywhere. But it was safe. The twins stared at David, their glowing eyes wide with something new. Not mischief, not fear, respect. The boy whispered, You protected us. David lowered the broken broom and smiled faintly. Of course I did. That's my job. From the throne room, the Queen's hand trembled against her chest. For the first time in years, she felt her heart soften. This human janitor had done what no one else could. He had faced the chaos and he had calmed it. But deep inside, the Queen knew this was only the beginning. The Dark One had been beaten back, not destroyed, and it would return. The question was no longer whether the human could survive the twins. The question was whether he could save them from the storm that was coming. The first bond, the nursery was silent after the storm. Shattered toys and broken glass covered the floor. Feathers floated in the air like falling snow. The smell of burnt air still lingered, a reminder of the shadow that had tried to consume them. David leaned on the broken broom, his chest rising and falling as he caught his breath. His arms ached and sweat ran down his forehead, but his eyes stayed calm. He looked not at the wreckage but at the twins, two small children who now clung to each other with wide, glowing eyes. The boy was the first to speak. You stood in front of it, David smiled faintly. Of course. Someone had to. The girl tilted her head, studying him. But you're human, weak, no power. Why didn't you run? David crouched down so his eyes were level with theirs. His voice was soft, steady, almost like a father speaking to children. Because you needed me to stay. And sometimes strength isn't about power. It's about not leaving when things get hard. The twins were quiet. No one had ever said that to them. Every nanny, every guard, every machine had seen them as a problem, as dangerous storms to be feared. But this human, he saw them as children. For the first time, their glowing eyes softened. The girl stepped forward, hesitating. Her small hand reached out, trembling, and touched David's arm. You didn't fear us, she whispered. David placed his hand gently over hers. Why should I? You're just kids. The boy frowned, confused. But everyone says we are monsters. David shook his head firmly. Monsters don't laugh. Monsters don't cry. Monsters don't want to be understood. You're not monsters. You're children who need someone to believe in you. The words sank deep, warming something inside the twins they didn't know they had. They had been called storms, dangers, even curses, but never children. Never something simple, never something human. From the hidden chamber, the alien queen watched. Her sharp eyes glistened as she saw her children's faces soften for the first time. No guard had ever earned their trust. No warrior had ever calmed them. But this human, he was different. The boy slowly stepped forward too, standing beside his sister. If you are not afraid, then maybe we don't have to be either. David nodded. That's the idea. Fear makes things worse. But trust? Trust makes us stronger. The twins exchanged a glance. Something passed between them, an unspoken agreement. Together they placed their small hands in David's. Their energy hummed faintly, but it wasn't wild anymore. It was calm, almost gentle, like the steady beat of a heart. David felt the warmth of their strange power flowing around him. It didn't burn or sting. It wrapped around him like a bond, fragile but real. The girl whispered, Does this mean we trust you now? David smiled, his voice soft. I think so, and I'll trust you too. The boy tilted his head. Even if we break things? David chuckled. Especially if you break things. That's how you learn. For the first time, the twins laughed, a soft, genuine laugh, not the sharp, wild sound that had frightened everyone before. It was the laugh of children, light and real. David's chest eased. For a moment, the broken room didn't matter. What mattered was that something had changed. A bridge had formed where before there was only chaos. The queen leaned back on her throne, her long fingers pressed against her lips. She had never seen her twins like this. Her heart, hardened by years of rule, felt something she thought she had lost long ago. Hope. But the palace was not silent for long. Outside the nursery, whispers spread among the guards and ministers. The human janitor had survived not only the twins, but also the shadow that had haunted the palace. Some laughed in disbelief, others muttered in fear, and in the dark corners of the galaxy, where enemies of the queen waited, the shadow's scream was heard. It was not gone, it was watching. Inside the nursery, David sat cross-legged on the floor, the twins curled up beside him. They leaned against him as if they had known him for years. For the first time in their young lives, they fell asleep without chaos. David closed his eyes, listening to their soft breathing. His broom was broken, his hands were sore, but none of that mattered. Because in this quiet moment, a fragile bond had been born, and he knew it was only the beginning. The Queen's problem. The alien palace stood like a mountain of silver, glowing under the twin suns. Its walls were taller than ships, and its gates guarded by soldiers who never slept. The alien queen ruled here. Entire star systems feared her name. Her voice could silence warlords, and her armies could crush whole planets. To outsiders, she was perfect, strong, untouchable, and unstoppable. But inside the palace there was a secret. A secret that no army, no technology, and no galaxy could solve. It was not a war, not an enemy fleet, not even a disease. It was her children. The alien queen had twins, two small creatures with shining eyes and strange powers. They were her pride, her heirs, and her deepest problem. Every nanny she hired had failed. Some lasted a few days, some only hours. Many left crying. Others begged never to be called back again. The twins were not ordinary children. They could move objects with their minds. They could make the air crackle with strange energy. Sometimes they disappeared for seconds, reappearing in places they should not be. Their laughter could shake the lights above the nursery, and their screams could crack glass. The Queen had tried everything. She had hired warrior nannies from distant worlds. She had called teachers with knowledge of 1,000 species. She had even commanded machines to watch them. Nothing worked. The twins played tricks on everyone. They tied a guard's boots together with invisible strings. They floated an expensive crown out of a minister's hands. They made one nanny believe the walls were melting until she ran out screaming. The palace staff began to whisper in shadows. The Queen is strong, but even she cannot control her own children. These whispers grew like poison. The Queen knew if her people thought she was weak at home, they would doubt her strength in war. That was dangerous. Late at night, the Queen walked into the nursery herself. She stood at the door, her long shadow falling across the glowing floor. The room looked less like a child's room and more like a battlefield. Toys floated in the air, spinning around like planets. Pillows were torn apart. A crystal lamp lay shattered on the ground. The twins looked up at her. Their eyes glowed faintly in the dim light. They were laughing, but it was not the innocent laugh of human children. It was sharp, wild, filled with power. For a moment, even the Queen, ruler of galaxies, felt uneasy. She wanted to scold them, but when she spoke, they only giggled louder. One of them made her crown tilt slightly on her head, just to tease her. The Queen sighed. She loved them, but love was not enough to make them behave. The next morning, another nanny quit. Her eyes were red, her hands shaking. "Your Majesty," she cried, "I cannot do this. They are not children, they are storms." She dropped her contract on the ground and ran out. The Queen sat on her throne, her ministers silent around her. For the first time, she felt powerless. Armies obeyed her, enemies feared her, but her own children defied her. And then, a mistake happened. In the palace records, a new worker was assigned to the nursery. Not a soldier, not a scholar, not even a trained caretaker. A simple human janitor. His name was lost in the paperwork, a detail overlooked by the officials who were too afraid to tell the Queen. By the time she noticed, the man was already standing outside the nursery doors, holding nothing but a broom. The Queen raised an eyebrow. A fragile human? Humans were new to the galaxy. They were seen as weak, clumsy, and inexperienced. What could one janitor do that warriors and machines could not? She almost ordered the guards to throw him out. But then she stopped. There was no one left willing to try. Every other nanny had failed. Maybe this was fate or just foolishness. Either way, she was desperate. The Queen looked at the janitor with sharp eyes. "If you can survive one night," she said coldly, "you may stay. If you fail, you will leave this palace at once." The guards around her laughed quietly. They thought the human would run the moment he saw the twins. No one expected him to last an hour, but the janitor only nodded. His face was calm, his grip firm on the broom. He walked past the queen and into the glowing nursery. The twins turned to look at him, their eyes flashing with mischief. The air grew heavy, the toys began to float again, and the walls seemed alive with energy. This was not just a nursery anymore. It was a challenge. The janitor took a deep breath and stepped forward. The door closed behind him with a soft click. The palace fell silent, and for the first time, the alien queen felt something unusual. Suspense. The human janitor arrives. The door shut behind him with a deep echo, leaving the human janitor alone in the glowing nursery. He stood very still, listening to the strange hum of the room. The air carried an electric charge, as if the walls themselves were alive. In front of him, the alien queen's twins floated a set of crystal blocks in the air. They stacked them without touching, letting them swirl around like tiny moons. The blocks rose higher, forming towers taller than the children themselves. Then, with a flick of their glowing eyes, the towers exploded into 1,000 pieces. The children laughed. Their voices rang like bells, but beneath the sound was something sharp, something powerful. The janitor tightened his grip on the broom in his hands. He was not a soldier. He had no weapons, no training for alien powers, no armor to protect him. He was just a worker who swept floors and cleaned halls. But when he looked at the twins, he did not see monsters. He saw children, wild, mischievous, lonely children. "Hello," he said softly, his voice steady. "My name is David." The twins blinked at him. No nanny had ever spoken so simply. Most had shouted, begged, or run away. The boy twin tilted his head, as if studying this fragile human. The girl twin narrowed her eyes, her small hands glowing faintly with blue energy. The toys around them began to lift again. A ball floated over David's shoulder, spinning like a planet. A chair shook, its legs tapping against the floor. The twins were testing him. David did not move. Instead, he leaned the broom against the wall and crouched down to their level. "You like games, don't you?" he asked. The boy smiled slowly. The girl, however, lifted the ball higher and sent it flying toward David's head. He caught it, just like that. No fear, no flinch. He caught it as if it were just a child's toy, and not a weapon thrown by alien power. Then he tossed it gently back toward them. The twins exchanged a quick glance. No one had ever dared to play along before. From a hidden camera, the alien queen watched the scene unfold. She leaned forward on her throne, her sharp eyes narrowing. She had expected the human to fail in minutes, yet he was still standing, still calm, still human. The twins weren't done. They rose slowly from the floor, their bodies glowing faintly as they hovered above David. The blocks lifted again, spinning around like a storm. A pillow burst, feathers floating in the air like snow. The boy's voice echoed in David's mind. "Leave, leave before we break you." But David only shook his head. "No," he said quietly. "I'm not going anywhere." The words were simple, but there was something behind them, something steady and unshakable. The children felt it. For the first time, they hesitated. The girl tilted her head and asked, "Why?" "Everyone else runs." David looked up at them, his voice calm and honest. "Because your mother asked me to stay. And because you need someone who won't give up." The twins hovered in silence, their glowing eyes watching him closely. Slowly, the floating blocks fell back to the floor. The air grew less heavy. The storm of feathers drifted to the ground. The children landed. Their small feet touched the glowing tiles. David picked up his broom again, sweeping the feathers into a neat pile. He didn't ask for their permission, didn't beg for their attention. He just started cleaning, as if the chaos of the room was no different than a messy hallway. The twins stared at him, confused. No nanny had ever ignored their power like this. No one had treated them like children. The boy finally muttered, "You're strange." David smiled faintly. "Humans usually are." From her throne room, the queen exhaled slowly. Her ministers whispered in disbelief. The human was still alive. More than that, he was calm. The queen tapped her fingers against the armrest. Something stirred inside her chest, something she had not felt in a long time. Hope. But the night was not over. As the twin suns sank behind the palace towers, the nursery grew darker. Shadows stretched across the walls, twisting in strange shapes. The twins grew restless, their powers sparking without warning. David stayed close, sweeping the floor, humming softly to himself. The sound was gentle, human, grounding. The girl whispered, "Do you fear us?" David looked at her with steady eyes. "No," he said. "I see you. That's enough." The twins went quiet. The hum of energy around them faded, leaving only silence. The queen, still watching from afar, leaned back in her throne. The human had passed the first test, but the real challenge was yet to come. Because in the shadows of the nursery, something else was waiting. Something even the twins feared. And David, the janitor, had no idea what was about to happen next.